Hello again, everyone. Terry Earthwind, along with Linda Vetras-Nichols, and we're hosting People Come First live, the book. And our special guest this week is Dino Carella. We're going to be talking about acceptance today, ladies and gentlemen. Dino, big welcome to you. I am so glad that you're on here, and I love your taste in books.
Yes, just let me make sure it is properly seen.
Aw, thank you.
It's such a pleasure to be here with you, Terry and Linda, and be part of this conversation with Jenny and John. So thank you.
Well, we're very glad that you were able to make this because, you know, a lot of what you just wrote a book and there's a lot of acceptance around that, some career changes and those kinds of things. And we've all been there in these big career changes. And you know, having a discussion right now is pretty on point with what's going on in the world right now and generally in business and certainly politics. And that is acceptance. And, you know, we've got a superstar here that works with her clients with acceptance a lot. Jenny Langren, you want to pop in? What's acceptance mean for you here lately?
Oh, acceptance means everything for me. It's the invitation that I give myself to open up to the lessons in life instead of being so distracted by trying to control the things that I cannot control, to make the choice to accept this moment, to accept myself in this moment, and open up to the lessons. What is important to me? What do I value through all of this? And it really is making me comfortable in my own company. And that is what opens me up to lead myself, to listen in with curiosity and make the decisions that I want to make moving forward. So, and Dino, it's wonderful being here with you.
Okay, Dino, let's put you on the hot plate, my friend. Acceptance.
What I discovered is that acceptance is actually an underlying force that arises when the ego collapses. So it's not even a decision that one has to make. It's a revelation that this is what we are. And you talk about non-duality a lot. And so non-duality really happens when there is no more strength of the ego, so that you can actually watch. And so acceptance is a space where things happen. There's nothing you can do about it because things happen, whether you agree with it or not, still happen. So being able to welcome it, to allow it as it is, it is quite a powerful place to be.
I totally agree. And when I think of the ego, I think of the ego as about a 9-year-old child, and it's trying to protect us, right? So like, what would you say to a 9-year-old child if they're trying to protect you? They're like, shut up, collapse, go away. Probably just say, thank you, and take in the nuggets of what you were told. Like, there might be some truth in there. There might be something to worry about. And for the most part, you know, it's just like, yeah, maybe that would happen. Maybe it wouldn't. You don't know. And so you just accept. And like you said, Dino, everything just is. And that is that place where the ego is not getting you going, is not in control whatsoever. And I just love that. And I talk about it as like non-duality. And we're so caught up in the illusion of duality. This is good, this is bad. Well, no, it just is. And the best part about just is, and the best part about accepting, is now you're free to make choices, make decisions, and always remember that no decision is still a decision.
Yeah. Spot on. John Chapelier, come on down.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It's lovely being here with you guys today. There's a whole lot going through my head as we're talking. This sort of agreement and acceptance being not necessarily in alignment. The idea that agreement just is, and acceptance just is. It's like in recovery. I do a lot of work with people in recovery, and this sort of one day at a time. When you realize that's all you're going to live is one day at a time. You can't live 1 week at a time, or so when you talk to somebody about it and they're like, I don't know if I can do that. I'm like, what do you think you're going to live today and tomorrow right now? I mean, you're going to only live one day at a time. It's just like, this is the same as agreement, but I don't like I agree with that. This is in alignment with what I talked to you about, Linda, a long time ago, which was in my original book, The Daily Six, like how I worked that in my original book, The Daily Six, which talks about gifts of devastation. And gifts of devastation are those gifts that we get given to us by a lot of times by exes. But a lot of times we get given to them by many reasons, money, ego driven. I lost a large company that was through real no fault of my own, other than there was some ego associated with it at the beginning, but it wasn't the cost of the company. It was just the timing of the issue. And I can remember somebody coming to me, and this was 1988. And this was a $60 million a year business that I had started from scratch. So this was not something that I really enjoyed losing. And I remember somebody coming to me and saying, there's going to be a day when you're going to be really grateful for the fact that the bank came in here and did this. And of course, my initial desire was to smack them. I like to have thought I would be, oh, well, that's a lovely thought, because what happens is you get sort of swept away by negativity. Negativity is a very powerful emotion. It's sort of that you were talking about ego. And what happens that to me is, you sort of go back here to this reptilian part of our brain and move out of the limbic system and down into our reptilian part of our brain, which is just like, fight or flight. And if you hit me at the right day, it could be either one. And certainly, God, that's almost 40 years ago. It was probably more fight than flight in those days. So the idea was, well, that's ridiculous. That'll never happen. And I guarantee you within 3 or 4 years, I had started a new business. Everything that sort of, my life was devastated, but then the acceptance of it, as I said before we went on the air, is that in accepting it allowed me to be more balanced and centered, and allowed me to deal with the issues rather than run around like a crazy person, being, led around by my ego all the time, rather than being led around by my consciousness, which I could sort of think through and work through, changing the way things would be, versus just sort of sitting in the depression of, oh my God, what I've lost, versus this is an opportunity. Am I going to do something with it? So, it took a couple of years, but yes, and today, which is a long time ago, but it's been a very long time since I've had any resentments associated with that behavior at all. I'm grateful that I'm on the path I'm on, which I would not be on had that not happened.
Yeah, John, I absolutely love how you label that your gift of devastation. I always think about that when things happen. It's like, yeah, just like John said,
there it is.
Devastation. Yeah, and it does. It opens you up to choice. So thank you.
Yeah. Almost any time you ask, this is sort of the good or bad. You were talking about non-duality and duality, is that it's not necessarily good or bad or right or wrong. What I try to get people to think about is wait and see. Wait and see. If we just give it a little bit of time, you will be amazed. And I've told people about this. How many times have you lost a job and found out that the next job you had was the best job you ever had, or you lost the love and then found true love? And it's just a matter of waiting and seeing, rather than making a decision today, rather than just being an acceptance of what's going on. So I'll mute myself out, because otherwise I'll just keep talking.
I love it. I often teach and talk about we either learn in life or we learn, good or bad, pass or fail. There's a learning situation there. You learn what not to do again. When you're a kid, maybe your hand got a little too close to a flame or something like that. You learned. Wasn't a bad deal, wasn't a good deal. You learned. And then there's that, the birth, we're all parents. So the birth of the first child, wow, you still learn. There was some good and bad in there, but you still learn. And, you know, if you guys are like me, I'm still learning about that first child. And, you know, it's acceptance, you know, is that point that, well, presence is the point where manifestation becomes action. And the quicker you leave the turmoil of the past and the anticipation of the future, you have presence. And that is where acceptance is. There is no good, there's no, you know, non-duality, it's just there. Dino, I'd like you to kind of come in there.
Yeah, I think, you know, this gift of devastation is really what opened up the infinite to me, because really I discovered what acceptance is when I was struggling with a very difficult time and I was really trying to fix it. And I was trying with all my, you know, my intellect and everything to resolve that problem. And when I saw that really what I was trying to do was trying to fight against my vulnerability, and then I saw that I am vulnerable and I'm fragile and everybody is. And so it's not even something that you need to accept, because this is what it is. And so the moment you accept pain, there is no inner conflict, there is no resistance. And so pain is part of the human condition. And so when you feel pain, you are there. This is all that there is. It's you. And so by not arguing with it, not trying to muscle up against that because you want to give yourself some kind of reason to say, okay, it's gonna pass, or yes, it's gonna pass. But if I tell that to myself in an attempt to get out of it, that's not acceptance, right? So the thing is, when I saw my fragility and I was trying really not to be in pain, fighting not to feel pain, I just let pain. And I was there and accepted it. And it's like the world came out from my shoulder because I allowed it. And that is what is acceptance to me. Whatever it is, it is. No rationale there. It's just, it is what it is. And although it sounds like a cliche to say it, but the realization of it is what really acceptance is.
Yeah, I love that. And when we do accept it, it gives us that presence, like Terry talks about, to notice, which is the word I tend to use, and think about, where is the pain coming from? What do you know about the pain, whether it's physical or emotional pain? And then that kind of self-coaching and digging a little bit deeper. I know for me, I absolutely hate not knowing. I hate limbo and I love synergy. And so when I can't get, and clarity, it tends to be really easy for me. And so when I can't get the clarity, that's when I am upset. That's when I'm not accepting. And it's funny because like, if sometimes that will just like catch up with me, like there's one thing after another, and it's like, what is all this saying to me right now? Like, what is it that I am so not doing or doing that I can shift, that I can change, you know? And it's beautiful when you're in that place of you can't control, to focus on things that you can. And then that can get really obsessive too, though. So it's such a not really like the word balance, because I don't believe anything's ever in balance, but you get the picture.
Yeah, you know, in the book I talk about my mother-in-law, who I stole away from my wife. She's now my mother, she has a great adage about, when the stress is going on and all that kind of stuff. And she'll just come out and she'll take a breath and she'll say, this too shall pass. And there's a lot of profoundness in that simplicity. Jenny's ready to talk. I'm going to pass it over.
Oh, goodness. What's coming in for me is that, Linda, you're bringing up clarity, and Dino, you're bringing up the pain. That clarity leads to action. For me, clarity is what reveals the choices, or it shows me how I can influence the situation. And the pain is one of my teachers. There's grief, there's happiness, there's longing, there's resentment, there's anger. All of these emotions are my teachers. And if I do accept them and I choose to sit down with them, I can really listen in, like you're sharing, Linda, to what they are teaching me on what is important to me, and what do I value. And it really, depression is really going around in circles, and it's like you're not really stepping into, you don't really have the neuroenergy to step into your choices. But when I do accept and I sit down and I listen, that is what catapults me into knowing what I want for my future and what I want my next choice to be, and what I want to open up to and say yes to, and what I want to say no to, and where my boundaries are. Because that's how I create my life. It's my yes, my full body authentic yes, and my full body authentic no. So it all comes, speaking of balance, it does all come together very nicely.
Right. That leads me to filters. And we've had lots of discussions on filters too. And it's like, what are you using to filter your life? And you might choose something and then you're just using it. And then there's that time to like step back. And it's like, if you're using your filter and something's not going right, it's like, are you using the right filter in the right moment? Like, what do you ultimately want? So that's been really interesting chat we've had too. Terry?
Yeah. And, again, we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening in. And for those of you who are listening after the show, thank you very much for doing so. Our guest today is Dino Carella, a dear friend and colleague of ours, as well as we're talking about acceptance. And, ladies and gentlemen, we're all emotional units. We all get mad. We all get upset, but we also get very happy. We get excited about stuff. And what we're talking about here is finding that middle in a quicker manner than allowing us to stay mad for a long time, or really overdoing the joy part of it. Because when you're in both of those areas, you're not fully present with yourself and the world around you. And in some situations, that can be dangerous, both physically, emotionally, and those people around you. So, Linda, do you have something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is your teaching, Terry, the sailor out on the sea, he knows, and Dino, you live by the sea, so you know this too, and you've been out on boats, and when the wave, however high the wave goes up out of the ocean, that's how low it goes into the ocean. So if you're finding that you're, 1 minute or whatever, it's just like some days you're just like super, super happy, and then all of a sudden super, super low, if you watch how high your highs are going and you bring that level down just a bit, then your lows aren't going to be as low. It's like, what? You don't want me to be the happiest I can be? It's like, how about you don't want to be as low as you actually get? And it can be because you're going up so high with the highs. So you just get to remember, and if you're okay with that, that's cool.
Yeah, Jenny wanted to bring in something. Let me go mute.
Well, Dino, I was wondering, because when I see my clients and we talk about acceptance, something that almost always comes up is the fact that we have expectations. And I was thinking of this when you were sharing, Terry. We have expectations on life, on what it should look like. We have stories that people have told us, or society is telling us of what it should look like. We have ideals. And it's like we can sometimes have our heads above the clouds, and the balance is also keeping our feet on the ground and noticing and accepting how people are truly choosing and what is really going on, and meeting ourselves and others exactly where they are. And I get to share with my clients how having ideals, if it's not imbalanced with having your feet firmly on the ground, then that is going to get us in trouble. But having ideals is also very close to having a vision, that we can see further and beyond what people are currently seeing. Just thinking of the pandemic and all the visions that leaders have upholded for their teams to push through and get through it, because we're going somewhere. We see this on the horizon. And so there's also leadership quality to excavate through all of this and on this journey. So I was just curious, Dino, how ideals and relating to ideals have showed up in your life.
Go ahead, Dino.
Thank you, Jenny. I think there is a lot of conditioning there, as you said. So we bombarded every day with this thing that we need to have a vision, we need to be motivated, we need to have goals, we need to be a better version of ourselves. All this is conditioning, and it goes exactly to the opposite of acceptance. So I think when I had a vision, it was the time of my life that I felt more excited, but hostage of my emotional traps. When I found out about acceptance, since that moment, I either belong to a vision and I feel like I am the expression of it, and it lasts for how long it has to last. And if it doesn't last, who cares? Or I am not worried about not having a vision or not having a motivation, because all this stuff is, if one really inquires on all this thing about having a vision, we need to all be visionary. Is that even possible? And for how long someone's life can be pulled, by a vision? How many vision do you have in your life? So I think there is a lot of conditioning there, and acceptance really, I think, at least the way I'm experiencing it, is that I don't have particular motivations, I don't have particular visions, and when I have something that is pulling me, for example, when I wrote the book, I had to be consistent and I had to have a certain discipline, and it lasted for a while. But that is what I did, because I had this thing. It wasn't even a vision. I had to share, and so I felt pulled by this desire to share. When I did that, done. And so that's it. I'm not now. I don't feel like I'm an orphan of not having any vision or any motivation, because I wake up in the morning very happy because I'm waking up, and that's it. I think some people really are more after excitement than really acceptance.
I love that. And you're describing my pleasure list instead of the goals. Like, what do I feel like doing right now? What is it that I want to do? What outcome am I seeking? And yeah, my pleasure list it keeps me going. And there's so much freedom in it, because I can change it as often as I want. And that's what came up for me when you were just describing that pull, because you had, it's like a desire almost, and it gave you great pleasure to keep going, get all the stuff that wasn't as much fun done, and see it to completion. So yeah. 23 books later, it's working for me, Dino. I love it.
Yeah, and when you don't feel like doing anything, you don't feel like you should be doing something, right? It's you have your own pleasure list, things that you like do, and then when you don't feel like it, it's okay. There's nothing missing there.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we've stepped into the word vision. Write that down, ladies and gentlemen. Vision. You know, vision is not associated with a timeline or a goal. A vision is something you have for yourself or your company or both for the future. It's not tied down to whether or not end of month sales goals are going to be completed, because the goals are not part of the vision. There is a bigger picture there for you to be moving for. So write that down about visioning. You know, all of us talk about visioning in our various businesses. So certainly hop on our various websites and leave your comments below. I'm really glad that you did that, Linda.
Well, COVID has been a great trainer, and goals can go right out the window in crisis. And when you have a vision, Terry set up the vision strategy roadmap. So it's like, here's the vision, kind of the ultimate that you're looking at. And then what are the 4 things along the way in that very first step of, you know, it's a breakdown of like about main steps. He talks about it like going to grandma's house, and there are stops along the way. You stop for gas, you stop to eat. If you've got kids along, you stop to clean up messes. You stop for all kinds of crazy things when you're dealing with kids. And so the nice thing about it is that, yes, stuff happens, but you're still getting there. You're still able to move forward, to be able to get back on the road, so to speak. And the greatest pleasure I ever had using Terry's vision strategy roadmap was with a woman who had 10 children. She had had her 10th baby the same year her daughter had her first baby. And she's a writer, and she just wasn't getting back. She said even in those smaller moments when she could slip into writing mode, she didn't even know where she was in the process. And so when I took her through the map, she had it. And so even if she only had 5 minutes, she knew what the next step was. And even if she could only get 5 minutes into the next step, she knew where she was in that step. And it changed everything for her. So that was really special.
Yeah, the power in the psychology of that, you know, okay, I only have 5 minutes. That draws you into that. And then you leave the 5 minutes away, because subconsciously the counter is going, and you do whatever it is that you're doing there with pleasure and presence, you know, and you know intuitively that your 5 minutes are up and it's move on. And you feel so good because you accomplished something.
Back to pleasure.
And you're right back to pleasure again. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And she homeschooled on top of it. So she was a busy gal. And she did move forward in her writing, and it was really special to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're pulling into the last drive of the day here, and I'm going to pass it around here. We'll start with John and do a little round robin here. Back to Dino. John, you want to hop in? This has been a great discussion.
It has been. It has been a really good discussion. I agree. What was coming up. I'm starting to use you and Jenny's phrasing. This is getting scary. What's coming up for me was this idea of control. And Covey wrote years and years ago about control and influence. And we want influence, but we try to get influential by being controlling. And it is only, when control is a good part of it, but the only thing we can control is our thoughts. And so if we just stay within our own thoughts, we may be able to stay balanced enough to be influential. But if we let our control go outside of ourselves and try to control a situation, the influence is still there, it's just negative. And so if you want positive influence, it has to be based on a sense of self-control, acceptance, and actions that reflect that capacity to be influential in a positive way. It's like yelling at kids or yelling at employees or anything else. These are issues where we've lost control, and we're trying to be influential, and we are, but it's not the way we want to be influential. So again, control and influence, Covey broke it down with concern, which are things we have absolutely no control over at all. weather and elections and stock markets and all sorts of other things that people worry like crazy about, but have no capacity to even influence. So the idea is, why are we wasting energy when we could be focusing on things we can control, our thoughts, our behavior, and our emotional stability and our influence? So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
I love your story, and then you stopped at yelling at kids, and I wanted you to say yelling at dogs because I love dogs too. And it reminds me of Dora Carlson, who's going to be a guest on one of these too. And yeah, and Dora teaches, like, you can't control your dog. You can lead your dog. You can become the alpha, the lead dog. And one of those things is to step out of the house first. And I know, John, you you're in total agreement on that one too. And yeah, it's amazing what you can do to show your dog that you're there to protect them, that you're not expecting them to go outside first and look around and protect you. And it just keeps you and your dog like super, super safe. So I'm going to throw it over to Jenny.
Thank you, Linda. There are so many teachings in this conversation, and there's so much coming up for me as each of you are sharing that I could add on. And the complement to this conversation that I want to bring is self-care. For me, when I am in periods of my life when my focus is outside of my sphere of control, and I'm just pushing and I'm not paying attention and I'm not listening, I have no clue what my needs are. And there's just no way that I am able to care for myself and sustain myself from the inside during those periods of time. So for me, acceptance is also opening up for myself to actually wake up in the morning and ask, so what do I need today? How can I show up for myself today? How can I care for me through this day? And that's really beautiful. That tags into the self-compassion piece, making our compassion complete by including ourselves.
Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. Now a little bit of acceptance, final thoughts from our guest, Dino Carella. Dino, how does day come out for you?
This was a great conversation. So thank you so much for having me and be able to be part of this great conversation. Thank you. I'd say that awareness is key, and the moment I actually see that I do not even have control over my thoughts, because thoughts happen, and the moment I see that thoughts are happening, a shift has happened there already, because there is that part of me that is seeing the thoughts running without my intentionality. Then that is what you mentioned, presence earlier, Terry. And so this is what presence is to me. It's like even being able to watch the thoughts that you don't control, and at that very moment these thoughts lose all their grip, their emotional grip on you, because you understand that you are the part of you that is watching the thoughts. So even thoughts that you don't control, of course, there is a wider understanding that that if your thoughts are telling you go and do this bad thing, you won't do that bad thing, because you don't identify with a killer, all right? So you're not gonna kill somebody, but you see that you have that thought that you didn't actually you didn't want to have it. It just happened. And so by looking at the fact that thoughts just happen and that you are able to watch, then you shift into what sees the things that we usually identify with, which are the thoughts. And so the thoughts lose their power on you. So that to me is perhaps the last thing I would say about acceptance. So awareness is key. And thank you again for having me.
Absolutely. Didn't mean to cut you off there. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of little pearls of wisdom in today's broadcast. We're talking about People Come First, the book live series. And today, our dear friend and colleague, Dino Carella, was here, and we were talking about acceptance, but we talked about a lot of other things, some very key things about visioning and the fact that, you know, life happens and, you know, we get mad, we get excited. And the faster we come to terms with that, like my mother-in-law, this too shall pass. You know, it's not easy. It's not easy for us. And when you're ready to address something or learn something in your own life, whether it be personal or professional, the words come through, the teaching comes through. So something probably happened for you to hear today. We would love to hear from you. We're going to be watching this on LinkedIn Live, Facebook Live, and YouTube. We'll leave our comments as you leave your questions and comments. Thank you again to my guest, Dino Carella, and always the team, John Chapelier, Jenny Langren, and my superstar, Linda Vetras Nichols. I'm Terry Earthwind Nichols, and thanks for coming. We're going to do some more, so stay tuned for each month.